Check It Out is an instructional module about checking in online banking from Kara Grisset, Tom Arnold, Annalise Waldy, and Angie Tucker. Our multimedia instruction idea came from team member Kara Grisset. She saw a need for an interactive lesson on checking in online banking to support her financial literacy instruction. Statistics show that there is a strong need for this type of instruction. Many states, like Pennsylvania, where this lesson will be used, do not have requirements for financial literacy instruction. This lesson is designed for high school students in the 11th and 12th grades. These students are beginning to plan for their futures, and many are becoming more aware of the importance of personal finance. One of the things that our group spent time discussing was our learning objectives. The original list was long and very detailed. We decided to regroup the adjectives and make them more focused. Although the objectives don't show up directly in the learning module, refocusing them helped us to make decisions about content and how to organize it. Our learning objectives are as follows. Define checking accounts and list their advantages and disadvantages. List the reasons for opening a checking account. Identify what restrictions, fees, and charges may be involved with checking accounts. Define overdraft protection. Define stop payment orders. Write checks. Define electronic banking and list its advantages and disadvantages. Define direct deposits and list its advantages and disadvantages. And define automatic payments and list its advantages and disadvantages. The instruction is a PowerPoint presentation which will be used to facilitate instructor lecture. Features include spatial contiguity, temporal contiguity, and elimination of extraneous processing. Another decision that our group made was how to segment the material. We came up with the following 5 units. Our group also spent time discussing the principles that have been covered in our readings during the past few weeks. Content was re-examined to ensure that it fit with these principles. Multimedia features so far include images and hyperlinks to simulations. Module 1 is a basic introduction to checking accounts. Module 2 goes on to explain the basics of checks and deposit slips. Labeled images are included to show students what a check and deposit slip look like, as well as key features of both. These images are hyperlinked so that students can learn more about these items if they choose to do so. There is also an image with a hyperlink to demonstrate how to write a check. Another image includes a hyperlink to a check writing simulation where students can write a check themselves. Here are some examples of the images that are hyperlinked. Module 3 discusses electronic banking. The first major image is of an ATM, which is hyperlinked to a simulation that lets students experience using an ATM. Images are used to show what a check register looks like as well. There is also a hyperlinked image that gives students more information about recording transactions into a check ledger. Module 4 focuses on bank statements and bank reconciliation. The first image links to more information about bank statements. Towards the end of the module, there's an image which includes a hyperlink to a bank reconciliation simulation. The final module is our summative assessment. In this module, an image is hyperlinked to an Excel document that allows students to write checks, record checks and other transactions into a check register, and reconcile their bank statement. Our learning module was built on the Schoology platform and is divided into folders by content. Students progress through the modules by clicking on the topic folders and then by clicking on the presentations. This is the final module that contains the assessment. After completing the assessment, they will upload it to the assessment folder. Here is one of our sample slides. Here are some screenshots from our summative assessment. In the standard, it states that this level of student is able to understand how images and sound convey messages in visual media. Our project will be centered around the student being able to interpret the instruction through symbols, line, written word, sequencing of images, and narration. Our project's success will depend on how well the student is able to mentally process the information and address this issue when discussing the three kinds of cognitive load: extraneous cognitive processing, essential cognitive processing, and generative cognitive processing. Our project will be designed to eliminate any extraneous processing by minimizing confusing instruction. According to Mayer, poor design of the instruction creates visual scanning that can consume a large amount of cognitive capacity. To increase learning capability through essential processing, our project highlights key phrases or terms that assist the learner's working memory. Even though essential processing is needed, too much of a good thing can be a problem. We don't want the student's cognitive capacity to be filled with essential processing to the point that generative processing is unable to be loaded, and then the deeper processing cannot occur. During the generative process, the student is able to make sense of the material through their motivation of learning the material. One of the main goals from our readings is to reduce extraneous processing when designing an instructional presentation. One way to reduce cognitive overload is through the principle of spatial contiguity. Mayer teaches us that when presenting multimedia material, the instructional space is somewhat at a premium, with words and images needing to be spaced closely together. Otherwise, the student is required to visually scan larger areas of the screen, causing cognitive overload, and in turn, is then unable to hold the images and words in their working memory at the same time. The second principle we use of Mayer's is temporal contiguity. With this principle, the student is able to absorb more of the material when the words and pictures are presented at the same time and not successively. Our presentation avoids long successive themes or images on multiple slides. Instead, separate topics are presented on individual slides, with titling and small chunks of information being provided, along with simultaneous imaging. By doing this, the learner is able to hold the words or narration and images together in the working memory, and then is able to make a connection between the verbal and the visual data. A good example of appropriate spatial contiguity is slide 14. This slide has to do with the check registry and how to use it properly. There is a simple title at the top with two small phrases of information and the image of a check register besides the wording. Scanning is kept to a minimum and flows appropriately from top to bottom and side to side. By the end of the lesson, our students will be able to reach the following learning outcomes. Students will be able to explain what a checking account is and how it works. Students will also be able to explain the advantages and disadvantages of a checking account. They will be able to identify the security features related to checks and checking accounts, and understand restrictions and fees that may be related to checking accounts. Students will also be able to define and explain such terms as electronic banking, automatic payments, overdraft protection, stop payment, automated teller machine, deposit, endorsement, canceled check, balance, adjusted balance, and reconciliation. Students will be able to explain the entire checking procedure from writing the check through the time when the check clears the bank. Students will also be able to balance a checkbook and be able to explain the process of making a deposit. Please click on the link below to see our instructional product in its current draft form.